Okay, so we're back with another, or I guess a further analysis of the unfortunate situation in Uvalde, specifically the breakdown of the police response. And again, let's say from the beginning that we are very pro law enforcement. We work with law enforcement, we train with law enforcement, and we respect law enforcement. But we have to call things out when they need to be called out. And unfortunately, we have a situation here where it's even more egregious than we knew previously, because as more and more of this internal video from the school gets leaked, we find out even more horrific facts. So let's go over to the video. So the video starts off with the perpetrator. This is right after he crashed his truck. He's now in the parking lot of the building, of the school building, and he's about to enter. So now this is important. At 11:33 and 12 seconds, he is walking down the hall in the school. All right, he hasn't entered the classroom yet. He's still in the hall. He's spotted by this other kid who I guess figures out what's going on and takes off, which is a smart move. And now we have the cops rolling in, right? So we have three so far in frame. First guy, I believe, had a long gun. All three of these guys have body armor. I don't know why this guy's not rolling up faster. Number four. Okay, so now we got four. Stop. Okay. Four of them in the building, in the hallway, and obviously something's going on at 11:36. Now here's where this officer checks his phone. I don't know why he's checking his phone. I'm going to assume that he's in communication. This is, I believe, Izzy, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the officer whose wife was unfortunately killed.
That's what they've been saying. They've been, initially it came out and they were critiquing everything, and this officer was on his phone, and another officer went to use the Purell, which is immediately to this person's right. And that just drew the ire of everybody on social media. And then I think shortly thereafter, it came to light that this particular police officer's wife was in the school. She was a teacher. She was shot, and she had been communicating with him via phone and text. And he may have been looking for responses from her. And then the information also was that he was held back and told to stand down. So maybe that's why he's posted up over here and checking his phone as opposed to running down the hallway with everybody else. I don't know.
Okay, so we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume he's obviously not playing, a video game or something. He's probably communicating with other police officers and whatnot. So that's fine. I assume he has a legitimate reason to check his phone. Now, here we go. Now you can tell right now, if you take a look at the position stool that he's got his pistol in, this is very old training. So this is just an indication to me that these guys are dealing with, training that's definitely outdated. In any event, here's where the action starts. Everybody starts running away. Now, again, I don't have audio. I'm going to assume that they're running because there's gunfire, because I can't imagine any other reason why they would run. But there's two things to comment on this. Number one, why are they running away from the gunfire? They're police officers. They have armor. They're armed, and they're in a school where kids are getting killed. So why are they running in the opposite direction? Can you imagine firemen running away from the burning building? I mean, I understand if it's about to explode, but otherwise, I can't wrap my head around this. And then this guy, I don't know who he is. I don't know if he's a detective or something. He's not in uniform, but I'm going to back it up for a second. But notice his kit is flopping everywhere. Okay, it's not secured. So I don't know who this is, but he doesn't have any business being in the building. And he's certainly not there to assist. I would think that he's probably a hindrance. In any event, continue. They back up, and now it's 11:43, right? And now we have everybody. We're crouched behind walls. We're all waiting behind the walls. We're all standing by, and there's still bang, 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 because we know that the shooter is still shooting. He's not barricaded at this point. Now we got more guys with long guns, ballistic shields. It's afternoon now. We're still staging, we're waiting, and now they're told we're going in. 12:21. Okay, that's nearly that. That's almost an hour. It's 50 minutes later, and then they don't go in. And then we find out in another minute that apparently this is the point where the Border Patrol agents finally breached and they took him out. So it took the federal Border Patrol agents who had to come to the scene from like 70 miles away or something. It was some significant distance away to deal with this. You got a whole way full of cops, and nobody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And there are no words. I mean, there are no words. Is he?
Yeah. I was listening to another breakdown of this video this morning before we went on, and Mike Glover was talking about how he was informed by somebody in federal law enforcement that had intimate knowledge of this, as to, he was critical of Bortak as well, saying that they were on scene but didn't go in right away. But he was informed by somebody that claimed to have intimate knowledge and details that when Bortak arrived, they had no idea that children were being shot. Now, as you know, I was a prosecutor for many, many years, and part of every case was listening to radio traffic and 911 calls and things of that nature. And I have to wonder, what it was that brought Bortak to the location in the first place. In other words, if they were coming from any extended distance, how did they know to go there? And were they listening to radio traffic? Were they being called specifically? And then, if it was radio traffic, then my presumption would be that they knew what everybody in local law enforcement knew, by the time they got there. But again, I'm guessing. I'm just relaying what I heard other people say. So even Bortak, they're being critical of everybody involved in the response here. And I think the common denominator is this was an epic failure of epic proportions at every level, and it's on video, so you can see it. And I guess we'll dissect this for years and years to come. It's a tragedy all around, and people are calling for heads to roll and accountability. But at a minimum, like you said at the very beginning, the training is a key component here. And I guess we're seeing, to a certain extent, human nature. Despite wearing a badge and despite wearing a uniform and despite having body armor, despite having weapons, if you don't have the proper training, merely clothing a sheep in wolf's clothing doesn't make a sheep a wolf. You need to train like a wolf. You need to behave like a wolf. You need to act like a wolf if you're going to be a wolf.
And the wolf evolves. Your training's got to get updated. That's
right. Exactly. And again, Columbine was 20 plus years ago, 23 years ago. So our knowledge has certainly grown. These threats have become more frequent. They're not outliers anymore, unfortunately. And for something like this to happen 23 years after Columbine is frightening. It's just frightening and tragic. And it really leaves me up at night thinking about this and thinking about my kids and whether or not they're safe in school and what can and should be done. It's not just about can anymore. It's what should be done. We need to do something. We have to change mindset. And I think certainly in the last year or so, opinions and the way we portray police today has really done them in, has affected them in such a negative way that, perhaps this is the fallout of that. Perhaps when our law enforcement doesn't get the support that it needs, and people are calling for defund the police and budget cuts and changes in policy and procedure, I guess one would have to scratch their head. Like, is this really so far afoot from possibility when the sentiment towards police is so negative. Again, it doesn't excuse what happened in Uvalde. I'm wondering out loud if the public perception and personification of them changed, whether or not we would actually see the change that is necessary.
And
food for thought.
Just to comment real quick on what you said earlier about, I guess, the fact that Bortak didn't go in immediately. So, number one, I mean, obviously they were contacted regarding some kind of active shooter or whatever. I don't know that they are on the same radio frequency and get the same radio traffic as the local police. They probably don't. But it's my understanding that when they arrived at the scene, they were told to stand down and wait because they were told that it was a barricade situation at that point, which is why they waited. Now, that was not accurate, but that's, I'm not sure if I read that or I heard that somewhere. But again, also, I guess we'll find out after the multitude of hearings and investigations that I really hope take place, and that this isn't, all covered up later on down the road. But we have video, like you said, of everything. So at this point, it's kind of difficult to deny what's going on here. And I think another problem is, besides the updated training, it's the updated mindset. Everybody says we go in immediately, we go in immediately, we go in immediately, and then they still fail to go in immediately. And the problem is, and this happened in the Parkland shooting also, where you had that sheriff's deputy outside, and the guy's just outside, and he's waiting and waiting and waiting, and he's not going in. And it was post-Columbine. The new philosophy was, the new standard operating procedure should have been, you show up at the scene, there's an active shooter, you go in and you neutralize the shooter. And you do it as fast as you can. You don't wait, because every second that you wait, more people are dying. And these are children now we're talking about. So how anybody runs away knowing that listen, they know they're in an elementary school. They know that there's an active shooter. If you hear bang, 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 run toward the bang, 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 not away from it. So I don't know what you want to call it. You want to call it poor training, cowardice, I'm sorry to say, or something else, but it needs to change.
Yeah, let me also say this. I mean, it's very easy for us. We're civilians. We're sitting here in our respective, offices or whatnot, filming this video. And how easy is it for us, the Monday morning quarterback, and to criticize, through a camera lens? But you and I train every week, right? We go to the range every week. We run tactics and drills every week. And it's not just standing at a point and shooting at a paper target. We actually run drills and scenarios, live fire drills and scenarios, and then we actually run scenarios in schools and in synagogues. We do it as individuals. We do it as part of a group. We do it as a team response, small team response, individual response, and we do it with such a degree of frequency that we start to really develop some skills, right? However, the point that I'm trying to make is, when we go for updated training from outside sources, from professionals at say Sig Sauer Academy up in New Hampshire or other agencies, and we have to run real world scenarios with people playing victims and using simunitions where we're being shot back at, all right, despite all the time and effort that we spend training in static environments where we're not being shot at, all right, there's definitely a learning curve when there's return fire coming in. And it is something that we have to get used to, and even training as often as we do. And I would venture to say that law enforcement, certainly at the local level, city, municipalities, are not training weekly. They're not required to. They're probably not going to the range. Once they finish the academy, I think they only have to qualify annually, and their qualifications are quite, limited. There's no scenario-based training that is ongoing. I don't believe that they're doing simunitions unless they're in some elite tactical unit. So there's something to be said for that. You know, we're not just speaking for the sake of throwing people under the bus. We actually run these drills, and they're not easy, and it's always eye-opening. And if you're not doing it all the time, then you can't hope, I think, to rise to the occasion when it is absolutely necessary and lives are on the line. Just my 2 cents.
Well, I think that basically sums it up. You're absolutely right. It's just, there needs to be more training, there needs to be updated training, and there needs to be the development of the mindset that there can't be any delay at all for any reason. If one officer shows up with his pistol, he goes in. You have to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know, you know, I mean, that's it. That's the end of the conversation.
Yeah, I think in final thoughts, my final thoughts on this would be, I think it warrants stopping for a moment and reevaluating and reassessing everything that we've learned and done thus far, and coming up with a new plan. That's it. And it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. It's going to take a lot of thought and a lot of input from various entities and agencies. But I think it's absolutely necessary to do that. And let's reevaluate and come up with a plan, not just on the law enforcement side. It should also be on the school side or the entity side as well. There has to be symbiosis. You got to be working together. It makes all the difference. The training should not be limited to one side or the other, because if you become exclusively dependent on a response that is not there, then you're in trouble.
Exactly, which means you need to learn to be your own first responder.
Yep.
Right. It's not even an issue of reliance or not reliance on law enforcement. If law enforcement does their job exactly correctly and everything goes off properly and they do everything right, it still takes them time to get there. And during that time, between the time that you call 911 and the time that help arrives, whether help then effectuates help properly or not, that gap in time, you know, means lives sometimes. So It's important to be able to act yourself. This is why we have fire extinguishers. We don't just call the fire department and stand outside and wait for them to get here while my house is burning down. We use the fire extinguisher. So this is something that we're going to be talking about a lot more in the future, I suppose.
Yep.
All right. So until then, Fox 2 Sierra out.
Thank you.